The G7 summit has commenced. India is a special invitee, as has the invitation been sent by Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister. The important talk that is going to overpower the entire two-day summit is obviously going to be about vaccination. Now, while the G7 nations have gone ahead and voted that they will be providing 1 billion vaccines to the world to ensure there is sufficiency and there is an end to the coronavirus pandemic spread, the United Nations General has gone ahead and said that these nations, developed nations, can do much more, and whatever they have gone ahead and pledged of allowing for the 1 billion doses is falling short of the actual capacities that these nations have. So when the Prime Minister goes ahead and makes that pitch to the world, to the G7 nations, with regards to the vaccination process and how India and other developing nations need that massive help from the developed countries, it is going to be interesting to see how these nations are going to then respond to these pleas and allow for cooperation and collaboration to end this entire pandemic spread. Let's open up this debate. Ambassador Mukherjee joins me on the broadcast. And my first question to you, Ambassador, the vaccine diplomacy has been the talk of the town for several weeks, several months now. There have been Indian ambassadors, Indian diplomats that have also been raking up this entire issue. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar had talks with his counterpart as well. And while there has been hesitancy from the developed world nations to provide the vaccines because they are catering to their own populations, now there is increased awareness that the virus does not have boundaries, and if in India is suffering, the suffrage is only going to be witnessed in a United Kingdom, as has been seen by the latest Delta variant. How is the global order going to change? And it has already started changing, but there has to be fresh impetus that needs to be put.
Yes, Megha, that's a very important question. Actually, one of the most important statements which were made just before the G7 summit was the strong support by President Macron of France when he said that France strongly supports giving a waiver so that countries like India, and he singled out the Serum Institute, have the necessary ingredients for the making of the vaccine, because it is essential for a country with a huge population like India to not only vaccinate itself, but given its huge pharmaceutical base, to then reach out to help others. This was in the context of internal EU meetings where France has been very supportive, and unfortunately the Germans have not yet come on board, and Germany is an important country within the EU and in the G7. And so it is hoped that President Macron's frank talk ahead of the summit will help to generate that support, since the Americans are now on board. You are very right when you say that the UNSG pointed out that it's just a drop in the bucket, because if you look at the large parts of the world which are yet to be vaccinated, it includes large parts of the continent of Africa, where actually we had originally thought we would be able to help, but because of the way circumstances developed and we didn't get the necessary parts at that time from the Americans, we were not able to get enough vaccines for our own population. So we've not been able to really put out a helping hand to the Africans. The Chinese have tried to help, but there is no enthusiasm in Africa like in other parts of the world for the Chinese vaccine. So this is actually a turning point, this G7 summit, and I'm sure that PM, although it's a virtual summit for him, but he has a very powerful presence. He made a huge impact for the virtual summit with the EU, and I'm sure he's going to make a strong pitch. The ground has already been prepared in advance by Dr. Jaishankar, our External Affairs Minister, and we very much hope there will be some breaking news which you will bring, dear Megha, on your channel, that we have been able to get G7 support so that we can make those vaccines go ahead, vaccinate our population, and then reach a helping hand, as we always have, to Africa and other countries, our friends in the developing world.
Okay, all right. So that's about the vaccination process, and that ball is now rolling, and it is gathering a lot of steam with a lot of international fora going ahead and pushing these European nations to change the developed nations to come out in massive support and not just make lip service to the underdeveloped nations, those who are less rich and are not able to afford the vaccines. Professor Madhu Talipat, the other issue that is going to be on the forefront is about the skirmishes or the kind of Cold War that continues to brew when it comes to the Biden administration versus Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. And he has already made this very, very strong statement before he has flown down to United Kingdom that he is going to be confronting China and Russia single-handedly on the sidelines of the G7 summit. What is going to be the participation of India and Prime Minister Narendra Modi expectedly in this two-day summit that we go ahead and look forward to?
Well, Megha, first I'd like to say that Ambassador Mukherjee is absolutely right about France. In 1998, you'll recall, the only Western power to give strong support to India after its nuclear explosion was France. And the Canadians and the Australians and the Americans were not only dismissive, but insulting. I mean, the Australians and the Canadians were particularly insulting. So there's no doubt that France has shown itself to be a reliable partner of India. I'd like to point out that as far as Russia is concerned, well, the reality is Germany has a nuanced position on Russia because it has got a lot of economic advantages from the Nord Stream pipeline. The European Union has a lot of advantages in trading with Russia. And I would like to say very frankly, from the very beginning, for example, during the Trump administration, even on my visits to Washington, I used to make it clear that they were doing a mistake in basically pushing Iran into a corner and basically handing it over in a platter to China. I think in our own case, we should have continued to buy Iranian oil. We did not do so. And today, unfortunately, Iran is much closer to China than was the case then. In the same way, from Clinton onwards, the problem with the Atlantic Alliance, they cannot conceive of anything except the Atlantic. For them, the Indo-Pacific, it was almost a concept that never existed. With the result, quite frankly, that they were constantly talking about Russia and ignoring the rise of China and the threat posed by that. In that connection, I'd just like to end this by saying, I think Boris Johnson has a very good idea and I would like to say, if the G7 is permanently expanded into a G10 with the addition of these three states that are there now, I think South Korea, Australia, and India, it will be a much more representative grouping, and more importantly, it will be a grouping with a strong footing in the Indo-Pacific. There's no way that the Atlantic Alliance by itself, without the Indo-Pacific powers, can have any footing there. So I think G10 is a great idea, and I'm delighted that the Prime Minister's
Trump administration as well had been the clarion call, allowing for Russia, India, South Korea, Australia to all be part of this grouping, making it G10, G11. Ashish also joins me on the broadcast, will give me the latest of what has happened at the G7 summit, day one of it. Ashish, the big news that I'm getting to know at this point of time, a statement that has been issued by the Biden administration saying that the G7 is going to seek rival China's multi-trillion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative by announcing a global infrastructure plan to help developing nations. So that's important, that's strategic. How is this going to pan out in the future days?
Well, this is certainly going to be a long-term, but a major project as far as the G7 is concerned. But if you look at it from the India point of view, there are two major aspects that's been focused from the Indian government point of view. One is obviously going to be the vaccine aspect. And before I go for the other information that we have just received from the Ministry of External Affairs, I must inform our viewers that the British Prime Minister wanted Prime Minister Modi to come and attend the G7 in person. But because of the prevailing COVID situation, Prime Minister Modi said he'll be joining only virtually. That basically is also is an indication that kind of importance is being given to India and Prime Minister Modi as far as G7 platform is concerned. Now, coming from the talking about the India-specific point of views, Now, remember the Indian government has been I would say earlier, right from Atal Bihari Vajpayee days till Prime Minister Modi, multiple occasions India has been invited at the G7, and this time we have the South Korea, Australia, and Chile as well in terms of the G7 plus or the invited members to observe. But India point of view is going to be purely on the vaccine aspect. The G7 has already kind of conveyed that there will be multiple countries, both through the international forum Gavi and at the bilateral level, they will be providing a lot of vaccine. But the problem here is the vaccine aspect, which is the key focus from the Indian government point of view. It's taking a lot of time as per the promises coming from the G7 countries are concerned. Most of them are promising of the end of this year or the first or the second quarter of the next year. And that's where I see a bit of mismatch as far as the expectation and the G7 trying to provide a solution for India is concerned. So that's going to be the key focus area. And obviously, we have also just got the update exactly to help our viewers understand. They can certainly tune in. The Prime Minister's first session today will be broadcast, will be available live at 8:30 p.m. It's the latest information today evening, and the tomorrow's session will be obviously post lunch around 1:30 India time. Now, both the sessions, the first outreach session, which is going to take place today, will be basically the closed one, and tomorrow's as well, where there are a couple of sessions that have been planned tomorrow afternoon, will also be the closed session. So, Prime Minister's speech will also help our viewers understand to all the citizens that exactly in addition to vaccine, how India is pursuing further at the G7
days that are going to be important for India at the G7 summit. Dr. Mohsin Wali joins me on the broadcast, and since we are on the topic of vaccination and how there is a discrepancy with regards to the global economies going ahead and helping India and other developing nations to procure the vaccines at a steadfast pace, it remains to be seen, Doctor, that there continues to be a gap that needs to be filled, because it is it is the urgency with which that India needs the vaccines. The vaccination drive, slower it becomes, it is going to be difficult for the economy to recover, as has been made by the statement that has been made by Nirmala Sitharaman, the finance minister, that there need to be certain amount of vaccines that need to be inoculated to the citizens by September end for the economy to revive, to reach 7 or 8% that has at this point in time been estimated by various agencies. How can we further ensure that these nations, these developed nations, allow for vaccinations to arrive in India within these 2 to 3 months than to be waiting for the end of the year? Because by then, perhaps there are going to be other vaccine developers that are going to be allowed to enter into India, and then which will reduce the gap of these, demand for the vaccines versus what is at this point of time available.
Well, I had seen this photograph, but there has been a lot of artwork. I hope it is visible on the screen.
Yes,
I don't know how much is. This is a very famous cartoon they have devised. There are other artworks too, but they are not very positive. But this shows how globally this you see, they have made a mega syringe and there are forces on the both sides. So this explains what you were talking actually. I just took it out while talking, you were talking. So you see, this is a need of the hour. This is need of the hour that we should do an audit of the countries. This is the only way. How much is the requirement of each country, and project this requirement before these countries. And my honorable, very learned diplomats would agree that there is a global shortage of vaccine in the countries like mentioned, sub-Saharan countries, African countries, also Bangladesh, Pakistan, India. So we have to really project our requirement and expect at least 50% of that immediately within next 3 months. Only then we can, we have a mammoth population to vaccinate, and that delay is counterproductive because rural population, rural folks are developing some hesitancy or resistance or rumor-mediated negativity towards the vaccine. Our Honorable Prime Minister, I'm very keen to listen to him, but he has in mind issues other than vaccines like climatic biodiversity, and you see all these have been projected in the outside the G7 summits. And very important point which Prime Minister has in mind, Honorable Prime Minister has in mind, is digital transformation. You see, we are heading towards the new world order, and things are going to change. So for these big leaders, it's a big challenge to show the path to the developing countries as well as to their own countries, how the finances will be governed, which will be the currency of tomorrow, mind this, which will be the currency of tomorrow.
Absolutely.
So many discussions about currencies and how we can prevent the environment. Yes.
If there is, if there is a lack of vaccination or a reduced number of vaccinations to the people, there is also the risk of the virus being mutated and then being completely immune to the vaccines that are being produced, which is again going to be a futile effort because it has taken us several months to reach this stage, allow for vaccinations to take place, and then if the virus becomes immune to these vaccines, then we again start from point zero, which is going to be an arduous task, keeping in mind the billions and billions of people that will suffer furthermore.
We have learned from the past that these are cyclic diseases, cyclic viruses, and from now onwards at least we have to remain prepared. We have to remain prepared for any further attacks of corona-like or corona-like viruses or mutated coronaviruses. So it is going to be a long game, and as Excellency Joe Biden also pointed out, and most of the channels showed his statement, concerns about the mutations and the new variants, and more correctly, new variants. You see, no one can guess when a new variant will come and how much resistant would this new variant would be for the available our indigenous vaccines as well as international vaccines. You see, the work is going on and we are heading towards an area of uncertainty that new mutations might defy vaccinations, might defy testing, might defy the pattern of the disease, and might defy the deaths. You see, these sudden, we are talking about third wave, and I am always telling people that behave yourself. Please follow COVID etiquettes, COVID norms, wear masks, don't forget to wear masks. And unless we do that, the world will not have any solution to this absurd, I would say, absurd virus and the future viruses to come. Sorry, I have used the wrong word, inferior word, but this virus is like that because let me complete, because our Prime Minister has also said in one of his speeches that it is a Behrupia virus. So it is, when it will change, we keep on talking in our studios, and I'm talking to you.
Allow for maximum vaccine to take place and not allow for the virus to mutate, and that can only be possible if the transfusion of virus from spread of the virus one person to another is reduced, and that will only be possible
exactly.
through the vaccination process. Jitendra Ojaj also joins me on the broadcast, and let's shift our focus from vaccination issue that is obviously going to be the overpowering matter that is going to be discussed. Hints have already been made, statements have been made by the G7 member nations. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is also going to commence his interactions through that messaging. But the second important message that comes across is to counter China with infrastructure that is going to cost trillions and trillions, and that has been the strong point that United States has gone ahead and has issued a statement in that regard. In the previous couple of months, a similar statement had been issued by the European Union as well when that meeting took place between EU and India about creating a parallel or a counter to China with regards to the CPEC and building a counter infrastructure to challenge China on strategic lines. So this is gaining more and more traction with a lot of these groupings, a lot of these bilateral meetings talking about countering CPEC. How is that going to further gain clamor, further gain mileage through this G7, and then perhaps the next summits that are going to take place in the near future?
Megha, we should be very clear. This G7 grouping, which was G8 for 17 years when Russia was part of it, this is a exclusive club of most powerful transatlantic power, with Japan being the only exception from this side. These countries have always been very keen to assert that they are the real leaders of the world. Isn't it? So there has been no confusion at all in between. They have been inviting a lot of other countries. We are not the only one. Yes, for the last 3 years, we are being invited from 5 sessions, I suppose, from 2005 to 2009, India was invited. They made it G8 plus 5, and China was also part of it. I'm trying to read international media and interact with people. It is widely believed that all these countries, all these months, they had been hoarding vaccines, and they've been trying to hoard rather more vaccines than what they actually needed. But right now, they're trying to send a message to the world that it will be Western vaccines. They are the real leaders of the world. And even the vaccines which they are giving, those are going to help people and not otherwise. China has been using its vaccine also as an instrument to exert its influence. Apart from COVAX scheme of World Bank, it has been bilaterally giving donations, 22 million or so, and 260 million odd. I suppose Dr. Wali would be keeping a track of it. Those have been exported, but most of it has gone as commercial thing, even though people are not trusting. But a good amount of vaccine, more than rather 2/3, it has given bilaterally to those countries where it has rulers of its choice who can help in Chinese agenda, who can come back to China in some way or the other way. So these Western leaders have realized that China's BRI project has been beneficial, or rather it has helped them co-opt large number of countries all over the world, and this is going to give them enormous influence. So they being economically superpowers, you can say major economic powers, they're very keen that their dominance stays. And not only it's guided by their national identities or transatlantic identities. All said and done, China's opaque and authoritarian structures have been causing a lot of suspicion. Even within China, we have discussed on your channel how 2 million Chinese have disappeared under Xi Jinping era. And China has a long history of being oppressive towards its own people. Even elites in China are not very safe. So naturally, all said and done, the choices we have within these choices, I think it's good to see that India is getting importance, but still we feel that this is illogical and absurd that we are a democracy, we are a large democracy, and we are not part of this kind of grouping. And we should not be happy and content with just invitee status, because in past, you see, all kinds of countries have got this status. Well, but yes, they are clear that, just let me complete. Yeah, they are clear that they are leaders of the world. They are trying to come out with just few seconds, Megha, few seconds.
Are then going to be part of it, and obviously the infrastructure confluence that needs to be created through these groupings, through these international fora. Quad is over here. European Union also going ahead and showcasing support is only going to be a counter to the